Sir, your family is in danger. The words landed hard against the cold morning air, sharp enough to stop 3 bodyguards mid-step. Richard Whitmore turned slowly at the foot of the marble staircase, one polished shoe frozen above the rain-dark pavement. His private helicopter churned overhead, blades slicing through the gray Connecticut sky with a low violent hum. The wind snapped against expensive coats and silk scarves. Maya Brooks stood 10 feet away near the service entrance, soaked from the rain, black housekeeping uniform clinging to her sleeves, chest rising too fast. One trembling hand tightened around the strap of her cleaning tote. Nobody moved. Not the chauffeurs. Not the security team. Even the Whitmore children stopped climbing into the black SUV. Richard blinked once, slow, annoyed. "Excuse me?" he asked, voice low and dangerous. Maya swallowed hard. Her throat burned. "Please, sir," she said quietly. "Do not let your son sit in the back left seat." A beat. Then laughter. Soft at first. Richard's wife, Evelyn, adjusted the sleeve of her cream wool coat and looked Maya up and down like she was something unpleasant dragged in by the storm. "Richard," she said, almost amused, "your maid thinks she runs security now." One of the drivers chuckled under his breath. Noah Whitmore, 12 years old and still holding his headphones around his neck, looked confused. "Dad?" Richard exhaled sharply through his nose. The kind of breath people took before firing someone. "Go back inside," he said flatly. "You clean bathrooms. You do not tell me how to protect my family." The helicopter thundered louder overhead. Maya did not move. That alone shifted the air. Usually, staff lowered their eyes around Richard Whitmore. Usually, they apologized. Backed away. Disappeared. But Maya stayed exactly where she stood, rain sliding down her forehead, fingers trembling harder now. "Sir," she whispered, "I know this sounds crazy." "Then stop talking." His jaw tightened. "Security." 2 men stepped toward her. Fast. Professional. Humiliating. Maya glanced at Noah, then back at Richard. Something desperate flashed across her face. Fear, yes. But something else too. Recognition. Like she had seen this exact moment before and already knew how it ended. "Please," she said louder now. "Someone pack that car for your son not to come home." Silence. Real silence this time. Even the helicopter suddenly felt far away. Richard's expression hardened instantly. Evelyn's lips parted. Noah shifted uneasily. One guard slowed his step. "What did you just say?" Richard asked. Maya's voice cracked. "The new driver," she said quickly. "He keeps checking his watch every 4 minutes. He never looks at mirrors. Yesterday he asked Noah what side of the car he sits on." Richard's stare sharpened. Dangerous now. Enough. "And the back left door." Maya pushed forward, breathing hard. "It sticks, but somebody fixed it overnight." "Why?" Richard took one slow step closer. Rain tapped softly against the hood of the SUV between them. "You think I hired idiots?" he asked quietly. "You think a woman folding towels figured out something my security team missed?" Behind him, Noah suddenly looked toward the SUV. The back left seat. His seat. Always his seat. Maya lowered her voice. Almost a whisper now. "I think somebody inside your house wants your son exactly where he always sits." Richard stared at her for one long second. Then another. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled across the hills. Finally, he gave a short, humorless laugh. Cold. Controlled. "Get her off my property." One bodyguard grabbed Maya gently by the arm. She did not resist. She only looked at Noah one last time, eyes full of something terrifyingly certain. Then she said 5 words so quietly Richard almost missed them. "He will not survive today." The words hit harder after she was gone. He will not survive today. Richard Whitmore stood motionless beside the black SUV, rain sliding off the shoulders of his tailored coat, while the helicopter churned overhead like distant thunder trapped too close to earth. Nobody spoke. Not the bodyguards. Not Evelyn. Even Noah had gone quiet. Richard scoffed under his breath and yanked open the rear passenger door. Get in, he said sharply. We are already late. Noah hesitated. His eyes flicked once toward the back left seat, then toward the iron gates where Maya had disappeared. Dad? Richard looked at him. What? Noah swallowed. Can I sit somewhere else today? Richard's jaw tightened. Before he could answer, his head of security stepped closer, rain dripping from his earpiece. Sir, he said carefully, might not hurt to run a quick check. Richard turned slowly. Because the maid said so? His voice cut through the cold air like glass. The man lowered his eyes instantly. No, sir. Standard protocol. A lie. Everyone knew it. Richard exhaled hard. 5 minutes, he muttered. Then we leave. The garage beneath the estate hummed alive as security swept through the convoy. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, cold and sterile. Black SUVs sat gleaming beneath concrete beams while mechanics crouched beside tires, radios crackling with clipped voices. Maya stood outside the service gate 50 yards away, soaked to the bone, gripping the chain-link fence so tightly her knuckles had gone pale. She should have left. She knew that. But her chest felt too tight. Her instincts screamed louder with every passing second. Then she saw him. The new driver. Gray cap. Black gloves. Calm. Too calm. He walked alone toward the garage, hands in his pockets, never once looking at security. Maya froze. Her breathing slowed. There it was again. Same walk. Same stillness. Her stomach dropped so fast it made her dizzy. 20 years ago, she had seen a man move exactly like that outside a gas station in Atlanta. 2 days before her little brother disappeared. No, she whispered. Inside the garage, Richard rubbed his temples while mechanics checked undercarriages and scanned compartments. Clean, someone called. All vehicles secure. Richard gave a short, humorless laugh. Wonderful. We can all thank housekeeping for the excitement. A few nervous chuckles followed. Then came the sound. Click. Tiny. Metallic. Almost invisible beneath the hum of engines. One mechanic paused. Frowned. Bent lower beneath the back left side of the lead SUV. Sir? Richard barely looked up. What now? The mechanic slowly rolled himself out from underneath, face pale. In trembling hands sat a small black device attached beneath the frame. Nobody spoke. The entire garage went still. Even the fluorescent buzz suddenly sounded too loud. Richard stared. What is that? The head of security stepped forward fast, face drained of color. Everybody back, he said quietly. Too quietly. Noah instinctively stepped closer to his mother. Richard looked at the empty back left seat. Noah's seat. Always Noah's seat. His throat tightened once. Just once. Then came another voice from across the garage entrance. Breathless. Panicked. Sir! One guard sprinted toward them, rainwater dripping from his sleeves. We cannot find the driver. Silence crashed through the room. Richard's eyes snapped toward the open garage doors. Outside, through sheets of rain, he caught sight of a lone figure standing by the fence. Maya. Still there. Still watching. And for the first time that morning, Richard Whitmore felt something he had not felt in years. Fear. Then his phone vibrated. Unknown number. He answered slowly. A distorted voice whispered only 6 words before hanging up. The maid ruined everything, Richard. What did you just say? Richard's voice came out lower this time, rougher, stripped of the polished control he usually wore like armor. Rain hammered the concrete outside the garage while his phone screen slowly dimmed in his hand. Unknown number. No trace. No explanation. Just 6 words that refused to leave the air. The maid ruined everything. Nobody moved. The mechanic stood frozen beside tool carts. Security guards exchanged nervous glances without speaking. Somewhere near the ceiling, Fluorescent lights buzzed softly against cold steel beams. Noah looked up at his father for the first time that morning and saw something unfamiliar. Fear. Richard turned sharply toward the garage entrance. Maya was still there behind the chain-link fence, rainwater dripping from her sleeves, shoulders shaking from cold, but she had not left. She had stayed. "Bring her in," Richard said. No one moved fast enough. Now. The gates rattled open. Maya stepped inside slowly, damp sneakers squeaking against polished concrete. Heads turned instantly. Staff whispered. A housekeeper lowered her eyes. One mechanic openly stared. The black maid who cleaned guest bathrooms was suddenly standing in the middle of a billionaire's security crisis. Evelyn folded her arms tightly. "This is absurd," she muttered. "She gets lucky once and now what? We trust her?" Maya ignored her. Her eyes stayed on the SUV. Specifically the back left door. Richard noticed. "You knew," he said quietly. "How?" Maya hesitated. Her fingers tightened around the strap of her bag. "Because people planning something like this follow patterns." Richard's jaw flexed. "That is not an answer." She looked down briefly. "My little brother disappeared when I was 12. Silence again. Even the radios stopped crackling somehow. Maya swallowed hard. "Before it happened, there were signs. Strange questions. People watching routines. Someone fixing things that were never broken." Her eyes flicked toward the SUV again. "Nobody listened to me then either." Noah shifted closer without realizing it. Evelyn scoffed softly. "So now trauma makes you a detective?" The humiliation landed hard. Sharp. Public. Maya lowered her eyes for half a second, then lifted them again. "Calm. Steady." "No, ma'am," she said quietly. "But surviving something teaches you where danger hides." Richard stared at her longer this time. Something was changing behind his eyes. Distrust still lived there, but curiosity had arrived too. Then Maya suddenly stepped forward. Fast. "Wait." Everyone froze. She pointed toward the mechanic holding the black device. "Do not touch that with bare hands." The mechanic blinked. "Why?" Maya looked at the metal casing. Tiny scratches near one edge. A faint oily sheen catching the fluorescent light. "Because whoever planted it expected someone to find it eventually." Richard frowned. "Meaning?" Maya exhaled slowly. "Look at the screws." Security leaned closer. One guard cursed under his breath. The screws had been stripped intentionally. Tampered with. Wrong size. Almost impossible to remove cleanly. "What if it was never meant to work?" Maya whispered. "What if it was meant to distract you?" Nobody spoke. Richard's expression shifted instantly. "Distract us from what?" Maya turned slowly. Her eyes swept across the garage. The staff. The mechanics. The security team. Then stopped. One person was missing. The head of security. Richard noticed it a second later. "Where is Marcus?" Nobody answered. Evelyn suddenly looked around too fast. Noah stepped closer to Maya without even thinking. Then, from somewhere above the garage came the sound. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Directly over their heads. The private family wing. Noah's face went pale. "Mom," he whispered softly. "Lily is still upstairs. Lily is still upstairs." Noah's voice barely rose above a whisper, but somehow it hit harder than the helicopter blades outside. Everything stopped. Richard Whitmore turned so fast his polished shoes scraped against concrete. For one terrifying second, nobody moved. Then everyone moved at once. Radios crackled. Security shouted over each other. The garage erupted into noise, footsteps slamming across cement, engine heat rolling through the air like trap thunder. Richard grabbed his phone. "Call Marcus now." Straight to voicemail. His jaw tightened so hard it trembled. "Lock the estate down." No response came fast enough. Someone was already filming from the back of the crowd, Phone camera glowing faintly beneath fluorescent lights. A billionaire family. Missing security chief. Threat inside the house. Panic spread quietly, invisibly. The kind rich people feared most. Public failure. Maya stepped forward. Do not send everyone upstairs. Richard snapped toward her instantly. Excuse me? His voice cracked with restrained fury. You think I need instructions from my maid? The humiliation landed hard. Staff lowered their eyes. One driver shifted awkwardly. Evelyn crossed her arms tighter. This has gone far enough, she said sharply. She scared our children, interrupted our trip, and now she is pretending to run security. Maya swallowed. Hard. Her fingers curled against her damp sleeves, but she did not step back. If someone wanted Lily, she said quietly, they expected panic. Nobody answered. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, reflecting cold silver against the SUV doors. Maya pointed toward the garage exits. Look! 3 black SUVs. 4 security trucks. Every vehicle door hanging open. Empty. Unwatched. Richard frowned. Meaning what? Maya inhaled slowly. Everyone moved exactly where the threat wanted them. Silence again. Heavy this time. One mechanic stopped breathing loud enough to notice. Noah looked around suddenly, confusion flashing into fear. Richard rubbed one hand over his mouth. Frustration. Ego. Fear. Everything mixing together too fast. Enough guessing, he snapped. I am going upstairs. Maya's eyes widened. No. He froze. Nobody said no to Richard Whitmore. Not employees. Not investors. Not politicians. Certainly not the black maid who cleaned guest rooms. What did you say? Maya looked directly at him now. Calm. Terrified. Certain. If Marcus disappeared, she said carefully, he knows security routes. Cameras. Safe rooms. If someone is upstairs, they want you emotional. Richard stepped closer. That is my daughter. I know. Her voice cracked slightly. That is why you cannot walk in blind. For the first time all morning, something shifted in the room. Not respect exactly, but doubt. Staff started looking at Maya differently. Like maybe she saw things others missed. Like maybe this woman everyone ignored had somehow been right too many times already. Then came the sound. A metallic buzz overhead. Faint. Sharp. Richard looked up instinctively. The garage monitor flickered once. Twice. Then every screen across the wall switched on at the exact same time. Hallways. Bedrooms. Kitchen cameras. Empty corridors glowing cold blue beneath mansion lights. Nobody breathed. Then one camera moved. The family wing. Lily's bedroom door slowly opening. Richard stepped forward so fast he nearly stumbled. Lily? He whispered at the screen. A figure entered the room. Tall. Broad shoulders. Dark coat. Face hidden beneath a cap. Noah grabbed Maya's sleeve without realizing it. Evelyn covered her mouth. Richard's breathing turned uneven. Get upstairs now! He shouted. But before anyone moved, the figure on screen stopped. Slowly turned toward the camera. Then lifted one hand. Waved. Deliberate. Calm. Like he knew they were all watching. A phone began vibrating on the garage floor. Richard looked down. It was Marcus's phone. Covered in rain. Screen lighting up with one message. From unknown. If you want your daughter alive, send the maid upstairs. Alone. The message sat on Marcus's rain-soaked phone like something alive. If you want your daughter alive, send the maid upstairs. Alone. Nobody breathed. The garage had gone so quiet that even the low ticking of cooling engines sounded too loud. Heat still drifted off the SUVs in soft waves, mixing with the cold air rolling in from the storm outside. Richard Whitmore stared at the screen, jaw tight, fingers trembling just once before curling into a fist. No! Evelyn said immediately, voice sharp with panic. Absolutely not. This could be about her. Every eye turned toward Maya. The shift was instant. Suspicion. Fear. Humiliation. A few staff members stepped back without realizing they had moved. Someone near the garage wall lowered their voice just enough to be heard. What if she planned this? Maya stood perfectly still. Rainwater still clung to the edges of her sleeves. Her sneakers left damp marks against the concrete floor. She looked smaller now beneath the fluorescent lights, but somehow steadier than everyone else in the room. Richard turned toward her slowly. Tell me why, he said quietly. Dangerous quiet. Why would they ask for you? Maya swallowed once. Because I noticed them. Richard took one step closer. That is not good enough. His voice cracked at the edges now. Fear hiding behind anger. My daughter is upstairs, my security chief is missing, somebody nearly set my son up, and somehow you are always one step ahead. Noah looked between them, scared and confused. Dad? Richard did not look away from Maya. Answer me. Maya's fingers tightened against the strap of her bag. For a moment, she looked like she might leave. Like humiliation had finally landed too deep. Then she lifted her chin slightly. Because whoever did this thought nobody would listen to me, she said softly. Silence again. Heavy this time. Even Evelyn looked unsure for the first time all morning. Maya glanced toward the security monitors. Lily's bedroom camera still flickered. The man had not moved. Just stood there. Waiting. Watching. They expected you to. Ignore me. Maya continued, voice calm despite the pressure crushing the room. They expected your team to panic. Richard exhaled hard through his nose. You want me to trust you? No, Maya said quietly. I want you to listen. Somewhere behind them, a phone camera clicked on again. The red recording light blinked softly. Staff whispered. Investors who had arrived early for Richard's private flight stood frozen near the back entrance, coats still wet from the rain. Richard Whitmore, the billionaire who controlled boardrooms with one sentence, looked suddenly cornered in his own house. Then came the sound. Beep. Sharp. Metallic. One of the garage monitors changed. Lily's room. Empty. The man was gone. Evelyn gasped softly. No. Richard lunged toward the screen. Lily? Nothing. Just the soft hum of the room. Then another camera flickered alive. The upstairs hallway. A small figure appeared near the far end. Bare feet. Pink pajama sleeves. Lily. Alone. Walking. Slow. Like someone had told her exactly where to go. Noah's face drained of color. That is Lily. Richard moved fast toward the elevator doors. Maya stepped in front of him. Not aggressively. Just enough. Wait. Richard snapped. Move. Look at her, Maya said quietly. Everyone froze again. Lily stopped halfway down the hallway. Then turned, not toward the stairs. Not toward safety. Toward the east wing. The oldest part of the mansion. The part under renovation. The cameras there had blind spots. Maya's stomach dropped. Oh no, she whispered. Richard looked at her sharply. What? For the first time since anyone met her, real fear crossed Maya's face. This was never about taking Lily, she said softly. Someone is trying to make her disappear. Someone is trying to make her disappear. Maya's voice landed softly, but the silence afterward felt louder than the helicopter still humming somewhere above the estate. Nobody moved. The garage had changed. The chaos from minutes ago had burned itself out, leaving only cold fluorescent light reflecting across black metal, cooling engines ticking softly beneath the tension hanging in the air. Richard Whitmore stood frozen near the monitor wall, one hand pressed against the edge of the steel workbench hard enough for his knuckles to pale. Lily's tiny figure still moved slowly through the upstairs hallway. Bare feet against polished hardwood. Calm. Too calm. Like someone had already told her exactly where to go. What do you mean, disappear? Evelyn whispered. Her voice sounded smaller now. Unsteady. Maya kept her eyes on the screen. She is not scared, she said quietly. Children look over their shoulder when they are hiding. Nobody argued. Noah moved closer to the monitor without speaking. Lily never looked behind her once. Just kept walking toward the east wing. Toward the oldest section of the mansion where half the cameras barely worked and renovation crews came and went every week. Richard rubbed a hand over his mouth. Slow. Distracted. For the first time in years, he looked like a man running out of answers. Marcus knew that wing, he muttered. Security rotation. Camera blind spots. His voice trailed off. Something darker settled into the space between words. Betrayal. One mechanic quietly turned off a running engine nearby. The sudden silence felt enormous. Somewhere behind the crowd, a phone vibrated softly. Nobody checked it. All eyes stayed on Maya now. The same people who barely noticed her hours ago were watching every movement she made. Waiting. Maya stepped closer to the screen. Damp sleeves. Quiet breathing. No panic. Just focus. Do you have a service map? She asked. Richard blinked once, like the question had caught him off guard. What? Hidden stair access, Maya said. Old homes like this always have maintenance routes. Richard stared at her for a second too long. Then looked toward the estate manager. Bring the blueprints. Fast footsteps echoed through the garage. Nobody questioned the order. Not this time. Evelyn folded her arms tightly, but even she had stopped looking at Maya with dismissal. Fear had replaced judgment. The estate manager rushed back minutes later with rolled papers, breathless. Maya crouched near the hood of the SUV, garage lights reflecting faintly against wet concrete around her shoes. She spread the blueprint carefully. Cold metal beneath her fingertips. Silence surrounded her. She traced one finger along the east wing. Then stopped. Here, she whispered. Richard leaned down immediately. What? Maya pointed toward a narrow passage behind the renovation area. Old service staircase, she said softly. No cameras. Richard's face changed instantly. That connects to the underground garage exit. Nobody spoke. The realization spread quietly across the room like cold air. Whoever planned this knew the house perfectly. Knew timing. Security. Blind spots. Marcus, Richard whispered. The words sounded painful now. Like he already knew the answer but hated himself for believing it. Noah looked up slowly. Dad? Richard did not answer. His eyes stayed on Maya. Really looked at her for the first time all day. Not the maid. Not staff. Not background. Just a woman who somehow kept seeing what everyone else missed. Then came the sound. Soft. Sharp. One of the monitors flickered again. The east wing camera blinked back to life for half a second. Long enough to catch something impossible. Lily was no longer alone. A shadow stood beside her now. Tall. Familiar posture. Expensive coat. Richard's breathing stopped. No, he whispered. The image froze just before cutting to black completely. But everyone had seen it. Marcus was not with Lily. The man standing beside her looked exactly like Richard's younger brother, Daniel Whitmore. The same brother who had not spoken to the family in 8 years. The image froze for less than a second, but it changed everything. Richard Whitmore stopped breathing. The fluorescent lights above the garage hummed softly while heat still drifted from cooling engines, mixing with the cold air curling in from the open bay doors. Nobody spoke. Not security. Not the investors near the back wall. Even the quiet tapping of rain outside suddenly felt too loud. Daniel? Richard whispered. The name barely left his mouth. Noah looked confused. Uncle Daniel? Evelyn slowly stepped back, hand covering her lips. The same man Richard had called dangerous. The same man nobody had seen in almost a decade. Gone after a bitter family fight over money, power, and betrayal. Maya stayed quiet. Her eyes never left the dark monitor. "He is not taking her," she said softly. Richard turned sharply. "What?" Maya stepped closer to the screen. Calm. Focused. No panic. The same woman everyone ignored an hour ago now stood at the center of a room full of people waiting for answers. "Look at Lily," she said. "She is not scared." Richard frowned hard. "You already said that." "No," Maya said gently. "Really look." Silence again. Richard forced himself to watch the frozen image. Lily stood beside Daniel, shoulders relaxed, tiny hand loosely holding the sleeve of his coat. No fear. No resistance. No hesitation. Like she trusted him. Something shifted in Richard's face. Confusion first. Then guilt. Deep and sudden. Noah swallowed hard. "Dad, she likes Uncle Daniel." Richard closed his eyes for half a second. Daniel used to visit every Sunday. Used to build pillow forts with Lily. Used to carry Noah on his shoulders through the backyard. Until the lawsuits. The board fight. The public humiliation. Richard had cut him off completely. Told everyone Daniel only wanted money. "Marcus," Richard whispered suddenly. His eyes opened fast. "Marcus knew Daniel hated me." Maya nodded slowly. "Someone wanted you to think this was an attack." The words landed hard. One of the investors quietly lowered his phone. A housekeeper near the back wiped her eyes without realizing it. The room had changed again. People were no longer staring at Maya like a suspect. They were watching her like the only person standing still in a storm. Richard ran both hands through his hair. Shaking now. "I blamed the wrong person." The sentence sounded painful leaving his mouth. Quiet. Heavy. Maya did not answer immediately. She only looked toward the service map still spread across the hood of the SUV. "The east wing staircase," she said softly. "If Daniel is there, he did not take Lily to hide her." Richard looked at her slowly. "Then why?" Maya hesitated. For the first time, uncertainty crossed her face. "Because he is trying to keep someone else from reaching her first." Silence crashed into the room. Real silence. Even the garage felt frozen. Then one of the monitors blinked violently. Static flashed across the screen. The image returned for barely 2 seconds. Long enough for everyone to see Daniel kneeling in front of Lily, saying something urgently. Long enough to see him glance over his shoulder toward the hallway like he was running out of time. Then another figure entered frame. Tall. Broad shoulders. Familiar posture. Marcus. The screen cut black instantly. Richard's face drained of color. His phone vibrated softly in his hand. Unknown number again. This time, only one message appeared. "You trusted the wrong brother." The message stayed on Richard's phone like something too heavy to put down. "You trusted the wrong brother." Nobody spoke. The garage had fallen into a strange silence, the kind that came after fear changed shape. Engines no longer roared. They only clicked softly as metal cooled beneath cold fluorescent lights. Rain tapped somewhere beyond the open bay doors. Richard stood completely still, staring at the screen while his reflection trembled faintly across the black glass. "No," he whispered, but it sounded less like denial now and more like regret. Noah looked up at him carefully. "Dad, Uncle Daniel never scared Lily." The words landed hard. Quiet. Honest. Richard closed his eyes. Just for a second. Long enough for guilt to catch up. Around them, the room had changed. Investors who once stood stiff with impatience now watched in silence. Staff who barely noticed Maya that morning could not stop looking at her. The black maid standing beside the service map no longer looked invisible. She looked steady. Necessary. Someone quietly lowered a phone camera. Nobody wanted to interrupt whatever this moment had become. Evelyn sat slowly against the edge of a workbench, hands trembling slightly. "Richard," she said softly, voice thinner than before. "Daniel tried to call after the board vote." Richard did not answer. The shame sat visibly across his face now. He remembered every ignored voicemail, every lawyer letter returned unopened, every family dinner Lily asked about, and he dismissed with one cold sentence. He only wants money. Maya stepped toward the monitor wall again. Calm. Measured. No triumph in her expression. No anger. Just focus. If Marcus sent that message, she said quietly, he wants confusion. Richard looked up slowly. The anger was gone now. Something heavier had replaced it. Why? Maya glanced toward the blueprint still spread across the SUV hood. Because if everyone blames Daniel, nobody looks where Marcus actually is. Silence settled again. Deep this time. Even security guards stopped moving. Richard stared at Maya longer than he meant to. Hours ago, he had told her to go back to cleaning. Hours ago, he had humiliated her in front of everyone standing here. Yet somehow, she was still helping his family. Noah moved closer to Maya without hesitation. Can she help us find Lily? He asked quietly. Nobody laughed. Nobody objected. For the first time all morning, the room waited for Richard. Really waited. Richard swallowed once, jaw tightening against something that looked dangerously close to embarrassment. Then, in front of investors, staff, drivers, security, and everyone who watched him command rooms for decades, he turned fully toward Maya. I was wrong, he said quietly. Real quiet. No performance in it. The garage felt suddenly smaller. Colder. Even Evelyn looked stunned. Richard lowered his eyes briefly before meeting Maya's again. I should have listened to you. Nobody had ever heard Richard Whitmore apologize to staff. Not publicly. Not like this. Maya looked surprised for half a second. Then simply nodded once. No pride. No revenge. Just calm dignity. We still have time, she said softly. Something shifted across the room then. Respect. Real respect. One housekeeper quietly wiped tears from her eyes. A security guard stepped aside instinctively to make space for Maya near the monitors. The power in the room had changed without anyone announcing it. Then came the sound. Soft static. One monitor flickered back to life unexpectedly. East Wing basement access. Grainy footage. Lily standing near an old elevator door. Daniel beside her. Looking nervous now. Looking over his shoulder repeatedly. Then the image sharpened for one terrifying second. Marcus stepped into frame behind them. Not rushing. Calm. Smiling faintly. Like he knew nobody could stop what came next. The screen cut black again. Noah grabbed Maya's sleeve. Richard stopped breathing. Then the old service elevator indicator inside the garage suddenly lit up for the first time in years. Floor B1. Moving down. The old service elevator groaned somewhere below them, metal shifting against metal like a memory waking up after years of silence. Nobody moved at first. The garage stood strangely still now. Engines no longer clicked. The fluorescent lights hummed softly above black SUVs streaked with drying rainwater, reflections trembling across metal that had finally cooled. Richard Whitmore looked at the elevator indicator glowing red above the garage wall. B1. Still moving. Slowly. Deliberately. Noah tightened his grip on Maya's sleeve. Nobody told him to let go. Nobody even noticed anymore. The power in the room had already changed. Richard stepped forward first this time, but slower than before. Not commanding. Listening. How do we do this? He asked quietly. The question landed heavier than any apology. A billionaire asking the maid for direction. In front of everyone. Investors stood silent near the back wall. Security guards waited without speaking. Even Evelyn looked toward Maya now instead of past her. Maya kept her eyes on the elevator light. Calm. Focused. No crowd, she said softly. If Marcus thinks he lost control, he panics. Richard nodded immediately. No argument. No pride. Just us, Maya added. You. Me. Daniel, if he is still protecting Lily. Richard swallowed hard at the word protecting. The shame crossed his face again. Quiet this time. Human. The garage doors hissed softly as cold air rolled inside. Somewhere far above, thunder faded into distance. When the elevator finally reached the garage level, the sound barely registered. Just a soft mechanical click. Then silence. The doors opened slowly. Lily stood inside first. Pink pajamas. Sleepy eyes. Holding Daniel's hand. Completely unharmed. For one suspended second, nobody breathed. Richard moved instinctively, then stopped himself. Daniel looked older now. Tired. Rain on his coat. Fear still sitting behind his eyes. But Lily leaned against him naturally, safe. Trusting. Dad? Lily whispered softly when she saw Richard. The spell broke. Richard dropped to one knee before she even reached him, hands shaking slightly as he pulled her into his arms. He buried his face against her shoulder and closed his eyes. No speeches. No dramatic tears. Just relief too heavy for words. Over Lily's shoulder, Richard looked at Daniel. Really looked at him for the first time in years. Daniel exhaled slowly. Marcus wanted leverage, he said quietly. He said you would never believe me if I warned you. Richard looked away for a second. Because he knew Daniel was right. Because all day, he had trusted power over people. Status over truth. Fear over family. Then his eyes found Maya. Standing quietly beside the elevator, damp sleeves still wrinkled from rain, saying nothing. Asking for nothing. She looked exhausted now. Smaller somehow beneath the cold lights. But stronger too. Like the only person in the room who never needed power to be heard. Richard stood slowly. The garage had gone silent again. Phones lowered. Security stepped aside without being told. Investors watched carefully, like they understood they were witnessing something private. Important. Richard walked toward Maya until only a few feet stood between them. I judged you, he said quietly. Honest now. Before I listened. Maya lowered her eyes briefly, then looked back up. Calm as ever. Your family is safe, she said softly. That is what matters. Richard shook his head once. Small. Emotional in a way nobody there had ever seen. Then, in front of everyone who watched him dismiss her that morning, he reached for the passenger door of the black SUV and opened it himself. Not for an investor. Not for a senator. For Maya. Nobody said a word. Noah smiled first. She rides with us, he said quietly. Richard looked at Maya, waiting this time instead of deciding for her. Outside, the storm had finally broken. Morning light stretched across wet pavement, reflecting gold against cooling metal. Maya hesitated only a moment before stepping forward. Behind them, the garage stood silent. And for the first time all day, nobody saw the maid anymore. They only saw the woman who had saved a family that never learned how to see her until everything almost disappeared.